Brad Johnson is here. He even gets his own camera. Just pointed at Jono. How about that?
Look at that.
How about the treatment of this man in here? We are talking finals. We are talking the Western Bulldogs, Toby Bedford, Brodie Grundy meeting with rival clubs in the lead up to a final. And your thoughts on that? Gerard's got us pumped up this evening. Jono, as we launch into the first final, you're going to inspire us tonight.
Give me everything you've got. Wow, how good was that
Do
speech?
something, Jono. What are we looking forward to in this final?
Don't think, just do. All right, well, it's the Pies inclusions in the first game. Collingwood versus Melbourne. When you look at the Pies, I think it's the impact of the inclusions. So you've got Moore, Murphy and McQuarrie.
Who's
so
out?
I don't know who's out
Brampton,
yet. Anyway,
McRae.
I'm not worried about who's out.
Who was
McQuarrie.
Okay.
Yep. And look, he's been so good in his role, forward pressure. Murphy and Moore shoring up the defence. The impact of those inclusions, I think, is massive for the Collingwood Footy Club this Thursday night. For the D's, best defensive team in the AFL. So can they hold up again collectively in a big final at the MCG? I think they can, and it's going to be that's why it makes it really important for Moore and Murphy in particular, who will see plenty of ball down their end of the ground, whether they can hold up, as will May and Lever at the other end of the ground. I have here the possible hail, which could determine the way the game is played, I think. And Collingwood in the wet are actually pretty classy, the way they go about it, forward momentum, off the ground, all those sort of things that they do really well. The must-stops. So you've got, I think, for Melbourne, must-stop to Goey. What I watched in this final game, round 24 game, he was on top of the ground. He was the most powerful man on the ground by a long way. And so Melbourne have to maybe do some work around that. And I think the Pies must stop Lever, because I think the competition took notice on a young man from North Melbourne, Eddie Ford, and what he did down in Tassie. And I thought, okay, that's something that could come out in the finals again, where an opposition.
Who's likely to do that
Well, I
job?
reckon Jeremy Howe is the man, because he's played forward for the Pies recently. He's got the aerial ability. He'll make Lever nervous at times. He can actually get up and compete with Lever in the air as well, who's so good at that. So, and I don't think he'll create too much of a leg rope. I think he'll stay at home a little bit more. So that's one player I think that.
And who's the ice block that goes on to Goey?
Not too sure about.
Would Harms
that.
come in? Hasn't played a lot of footy this year.
I think they'll back themselves in first. But what they have to watch with De Goey is his exit from stoppage, because that was the critical aspect that really separated him in his last performance, was his ability to push out from contest around the middle of the ground.
So it's a cake and eat it too, John.
A little bit.
Yeah, and Petrarca v. De Goey, they're not going to play on each other, but the impact that those two have, they're both built for finals. They both play a similar role, and who has the biggest influence could decide the game. The weather, Sammy, it just says
rotten.
Very high chance of showers, possible small hail in the afternoon and evening. It's going to be windy, so winds northerly 30 to 45 kilometres, turning westerly during the afternoon. It might be okay. Yeah, that might.
Back him to get it wrong.
I'm gonna
Not
back
a couple
the
of days
weather.
out.
It's finals time. The sun will be out. It'll be perfect and ready to go.
The sun will be out. The sun will be out at night time.
Yeah.
Friday, the Weather Bureau has improved over the last period.
You think
of time.
they've improved?
Yeah, they've had
Is
a
that
good year.
right?
I do, yep.
You think they've improved?
Absolutely.
Within a couple of days.
I think the computer modelling has improved.
Well, Friday looks worse, just for the record.
Well, let's
doesn't
get
look
on to
good.
that. Let's get on to that game then, because this is critical. The weather will play a part as well, but for the Blues, accuracy is the key. They're one of the best stoppage teams, so supply will be there to their forwards. They must be accurate early in this game to give themselves a position to maybe separate it, especially if the weather is poor, because you know the Swans will bring pressure. They will create the turnover. They'll give themselves enough opportunity going the other way. They build a big pressure game, and if Carlton can absorb that and then accurately score, then that may be the difference in this game. The Blues must stop Blakey's overlap run from the back half for the Sydney Swans. I think that's the kicking out from full back, and stop that next one. If he gets the first one, don't let him get the next one.
We call him the lizard on this program.
I reckon
the lizard.
Vossi has got up on the board when the players walked in, the forward group. Operation Stop the Lizard.
Well, he murdered them in the corresponding game.
He did.
Absolutely murdered them.
He's been in incredible form.
They got a couple
Very
though,
stiff not to get in the All-Australian.
Gordon's the other one.
Gordon's the other one.
Those ball users that they've got, and Gordon kicking the footy inside forward 50 is a worry. How much wing time versus how much on ball.
What would you keep Gordon down to, Kane? And
always under 20.
Always under 20.
If it was over 20, it was a disaster.
And no score as well. So Sydney must stop Cripps. Now, the reason I've gone to Cripps is first final. So he's going to want to carry this team and inspire them and get them up. If they can do a job on Cripps, then that puts him in a really good spot
So
to win the
I want to
midfield
ask you
battle.
about this because in round 11, now I'm not sure if Mills played. I'll have to check that for the Swans. Heaney came up and did the job on Cripps.
He did,
And it was
at
that
SED, yeah.
time when Cripps was getting hunted from the opposition.
Won't
Remember,
be doing that
Agreed.
this time.
Dawson did it, Jack Steele did it, Heaney did it. So you think Sydney need Heaney in the front half,
Yep,
Gerard?
absolutely. He's
Mills
been
is
their
the
best
man.
player. Best
Mills
player
is
in the
the man.
second
Mills
half
is definitely the
season.
man. He's got
Alright.
discipline, but he can also win his own ball in tight. He's pretty crafty around stoppages
And I reckon
himself.
you can, with all due respect, you can expose Cripps the other way as well. He's not that defensive as a lot of the best midfielders aren't. So that
That's
must
That's
be
why
the
they went
focus
Heaney.
as
That's
well.
why they went Heaney, which
That's
wasn't a
what I'm
bad
saying,
bad ploy.
yeah.
And
You'd
Mills
like
didn't
Mills
play
to do
last
more
time,
of that.
to answer your question.
You'd like to see Mills do more of
Yep.
that, not just on Cripps, but on whoever he plays on and whoever he plays on next year if he does the same role.
All right. The Saints have channeled the nobody believes in us feeling. They've put some social media propaganda out about how everyone was writing them off, maybe including me. I don't know. I might put my
You gonna
hand
run?
up. I got to run. Myself and Bucks were pretty prominent in that. So can they do it? Can the Saints beat the Giants?
If they kick it well.
Okay.
And big pressure in a final, and we know the Giants will bring that. So can they kick it well? Their defensive chains are good. They'll move the ball. They move the ball well during the home and away season, but it comes down to their kicking efficiency. If they can move it well and then kick it well and not allow the turnover in critical positions, then I think they're going to be well and truly in this game because their defensive structure will allow them to stop the opposition.
You know what
at
I'm
certain
looking forward
points.
to most this week is when Dr. Hoyne comes in tomorrow. I want to actually road test the myth, if it is or if it isn't, that there's more pressure in finals football.
That's a good point. I think there is, though.
I think there's
From a visual, there is.
I think from what's inside your own ears there may be,
Yeah.
but the actual physical pressure, I'll be interested to see what the averages are over the season versus the averages what there have been over
So-
the finals. Dr. Hoyne, if you can
Yep.
get those prepared for us tomorrow, that'd
He
be
will, and there may be
fantastic.
some numbers to back it up or not,
Yeah.
but I think the visual aspect and the high pressure stakes that come with it. You're right. Maybe it is above the
We
shoulders a
have
little
seen
bit, Gerard, but it
so
is,
many unbelievable pressure games this year.
Mm.
It's hard to know whether or not it can go up.
What about the myth, if it is a myth, of injured players don't perform in finals? And I'm looking at Sam Taylor and whether they roll the dice on him. I think that, Sammy, you might be able to tell 50-50 on
I think he's going to need every day.
Every day.
Every minute, every hour.
because it's on the
Yeah.
border. It's about 20
Yeah.
days, I reckon, is
It's
it?
going to run the distance, this one, I think.
Ooh.
I expect, without knowing for sure, they'll name him and they'll give him as long as they possibly can.
Because I reckon King's got to kick 4+ for them to win. Now, when he's kicked 4+ in the last 2 seasons, they're 6-2, the Saints, and their scoring is an issue. If it's not him, I'm not sure who kicks their goals. And if Taylor plays or doesn't play, it's hard to see him kicking 4 on Taylor. So that could be a big deciding factor in this game as well.
Would you take the risk, Jono, if the medico said he's 85%?
No.
No?
no, I wouldn't be taking a risk like that. No way.
It is interesting with hammies. We're very conservative, but we
Yep.
know that May played a grand
Yeah,
final
good
with
point.
a torn hammy. We saw Novak, your man Gerard, win
Yep.
the Australian Open
Yep.
with a tear in his hammy. So I don't know.
Are they that bad?
Well, if they
No,
lo-
they have to.
if they
You
lose, they're out.
can't.
Like it's the
That's it.
last chance though. This is not a Port Adelaide situation. You lose, you get another week, or a Dacos one at Collingwood. They're out if they lose.
I know. It's a big decision.
It is.
It's
And-
a
and
massive
they
decision because you lose him halfway through the first, and you
Let's hope whatever they do,
Are
the
you getting a
Giants,
sub to back him up? Like that's where some big
whatever they do,
conversations
though,
happen.
let's hope there's not a stress test before the match like they did in the grand final. Let's hope we've moved
No,
on from that.
Exactly right. So they have to have courage to commit to the corridor ball, I think, GWS. If they do that, they excel off corridor ball. We know that's where they get a lot of their run from. Their form's excellent, but if they can do it in a big final as well, it puts them in the window to win. Saints must stop Toby Green. I think
How
we
do
all
they do
get
that?
that.
And who
It's
do
a
they do it?
really good point.
Is it Wilkie?
Well,
give Wilkie the job.
It could be, but
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think
Not
this is
too
obvious.
sure.
I don't
It's
think
not.
this
Wilkie
is
be
an
on
obvious
Hogan, won't he?
one.
well, that's the thing that they do have a bit more flexibility down there, where Toby Green sort of gets a better matchup for Toby Green, and that's
Webster.
why. Well, it could be as well, but that's one-on-one. I think Toby Green gets Webster, where
If-
the ball's on the deck and it's moving a little bit more. Webster could probably have a bit more of
But
an
if
impact.
Green gets Wilkie, because he's such a good interceptor, he's smart enough to
Yep.
get him out the way as well, because Toby Green can do damage up around the stoppage and then get him out the
Yep.
back. So they can remove Wilkie from where he's done the damage. So I suspect they won't start with Wilkie on Toby Green for that reason. We'll see what role Cordy plays and whether he can play on Hogan if things need to be shuffled. But that is an interesting one. What about for
And-
the Giants?
Well,
Who they gotta
Jack
stop?
Sinclair's the star, and he has been all year. But the way he sets up is really strong on the back of Ross Lyon. He either gets him in the contest, hits him just off the contest, pushes him to half back. So They have to. I think they have to restrict Sinclair to under. I was going to say under 25. Under 20 would be a huge win, but under 25, I think is nearly a win in itself because he's 30 to 40 disposals effective easily.
If you put a hard tag on him, though, you should be able to keep him.
You should be able to.
20. Under 15 even.
Well,
Hard
that's
tag.
massive.
I'm talking Finn McGuinness.
Okay,
The
so
ice block.
and I wouldn't have an issue with that if GWS went and said, okay, Jack Sinclair is not getting 30, 25
Yeah.
or more this afternoon or tonight. So I think that's exactly what they need to do. But whether they do or not, well, we wait and see.
All right. What about this game on Saturday night, the second qualifying final?
Brisbane, they just need to lock it in their front half and convert. I think at home conversion's the key for this Brisbane Lions team, and we know that they can miss the easy one and kick the hard one. So we wait and see what they actually bring. They'll play a front half game as much as they can, excite the crowd, bring them into it as much as possible. Port Adelaide, they just need midfield dominance. It's going to be we talk about the midfield battle a lot, and I haven't mentioned it once in the other finals, but this is the one where the midfield, I think, for both teams can separate the game, and they both bat deep.
Yeah.
So, and the rotations going through there are quite strong. It's who can take the advantage in that area of the ground.
Did you have a team personally that you loved playing against, that you just played well against every time? You probably had more.
17 others.
I know there was. But
Cats, you saved some of your good stuff for the
was there
Cats.
one in particular?
No.
Because Lockie Neal, honestly, I'm going to look.
He loves playing Port Adelaide,
You
does
two
he?
chat amongst each other. I'm going to check up Lockie Neal's stats against Port Adelaide. It is
All right.
amazing. Now, it goes back to pre-draft when Port Adelaide didn't give him the time of day. South Australian boy, didn't interview him, didn't talk to him, didn't show any interest. Adelaide did.
Right.
And he has held it against them ever since. And I'm telling you,
Personal.
I love that.
He uses this as motivation, and he makes them look silly time and time again.
Won't Willem Drew go on?
Willem Drew will go to him, Gerard, but whether he can get the job done or not. I'm telling you, they've spoken about Lockie Neal for 2 weeks now and how to stop him. In the past, Ken Hinkley, I reckon he went with
20
Trent Dumont once to try and rough him up, and he couldn't do it.
averages 29 touches a game against Port Adelaide, 16 matches against them for a 10-6 record. But he's got a bet. I
But
mean,
some of those are even
Fourth.
dates back to
fourth most prolific. Anyway, he saves his best for Essendon. It would
It
appear.
even dates back to Fremantle days, though, Sammy, and his clearance numbers and possession numbers are enormous.
I love
so
that.
that's one to watch.
Hold a grudge. So Port Adelaide, we spoke about the midfield dominance. Brisbane must stop Houston and not his overlap run, but when they're having a set shot from outside 50, beyond the fact that Houston's there ready to receive that handball receive, because I think it inspires them when he does kick one from outside 50. And Port Adelaide must stop this.
Country roads, take me home.
They got to stop the
I
music.
don't want to hear that. too
Port
often.
Adelaide have to stop the music.
Yep.
That's the key. Yes, from Charlie Cameron, but from, I'm not sure what Joe
John
Danaher is rolling with these days.
If you're hearing a lot of John Denver outside the Gabba, you're in trouble.
You're exactly right.
Keep the motorbike in the garage.
Yes.
Keep the motorbike
Very
away
good.
from it. He's been in good form the last 2 or 3 weeks too, Charlie.
So I wonder, as much as it's an individual matchup, whether structurally you've got to put someone back, as some clubs call it a wicketkeeper, some call it a quarterback, whatever name you use for it. What we're saying is don't let Charlie Cameron get between you and
the
your
goals.
last Port Adelaide defender. So you have to focus on that. I'm not sure who can do that.
I think that's
role.
more when Joe is up playing a bit more higher and then you through the ruck, Hipwood's there, then Charlie's always the last. So I think that's the time. There's going to be just certain stages in game that you might have to have that in play.
All right, is it too early to get your tips, or like is a Monday too early to get your four
not for
winners?
Jono.
No, it's not too early. I'm going for Collingwood, Carlton, GWS and Brisbane.
All right, that's good because someone said, I hope this clown picks Melbourne. I think they were talking about me, not you.
Okay.
Off the Timber text.
Well,
But that was just
that's
a bit
all
of
right.
feedback. For,
I can accept the feedback. It's
Yeah.
only to make us better, isn't
for
it?
you or me.
He could have not read that out, to be honest.
They thought Dr. Horn was in here.
No, well, I didn't know if it was talking about me or whether John. I'm assuming it was about me. We read all feedback.
Oh, no,
so-
mean tweets, bring him
Well,
back.
we're
I've
not-
always said
we're not
that.
sensitive in this studio. What about some other issues, John? Did you have an issue with Brodie Grundy meeting with
Meeting with some players.
other clubs?
The players from other clubs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the coach.
Well,
Yeah, and the coach.
no, not really, because that's just the nature of the way it is these days. Maybe a few years ago, yeah, but currently now I haven't got.
Jono,
An
if
issue
You were a
with it.
leader at Melbourne. You're trying
Yeah, but
to
I'm
win
not.
a
Are you asking me if I've got the issue with
Yeah.
it? No, I don't.
Should Melbourne have an issue with it? Then I'll rephrase the question.
Has Brodie already been informed as to what they're doing?
Well, I wouldn't.
or
have-
his management?
Well, I think he's the one making the call. I think
Yeah.
Melbourne, Sammy would be happy to keep him, wouldn't
Said publicly many times I want
Okay.
to keep him.
they? Yeah.
Well, it's
So
it's on Brodie.
He's gone rogue.
Oh. So do you have if you're a Melbourne player, you'd have a problem
Yeah,
with it?
I would.
Did you ever meet an opposition player at all and have
Yeah.
a chat to him?
Yes, I did at the end. Oh, sorry.
End of season or
Oh,
during
I
season?
personally wanted to go at one
Oh,
point.
did
So
you?
I did meet with a club at
the end of the
At the
season?
end of the season.
Yeah.
At my house. I can't believe they got sprung doing this.
So your
for
issue is not
Adelaide.
that it happened, but that it happened in season.
Yeah, they're trying to win a premiership.
Yeah.
They're gearing
So
up
you
for a
don't think
first
if
final.
Brodie Grundy was picked, let's say Brodie Grundy is picked against the odds this weekend, you'd saying he'd be less committed because he's met with Port
Well, I
Adelaide?
just don't know whether he would be fully focused on what
Really?
he should be focused on. Well, if you're thinking about another team, and
You don't think come
In some ways,
game
that's what
time-
in some ways that's what you got a manager for. If he's,
Melbourne might play
I
Port
don't know if he's
Adelaide
got a
in the
manager.
final.
Has he got a manager, or does he do it himself?
Brodie Grundy. No, he's got a manager.
Yeah.
And Connor Sports look after him, Robbie
Yeah.
D'Orazio. But if I'm Brodie Grundy, and I know this is the way he thinks anyway, you're in charge of your own destiny in many respects.
get that.
You want to have your hands on the steering wheel, surely, as to where you may or may not go next.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would want to anyway.
But you'd think your management's having those conversations at this particular
But
point.
you need
until
to have a
you're
relation
done.
until you're done.
He's
yeah,
paid
okay.
them
Yeah.
3% of a 7-year deal worth $1 million. I think they can look after it. They're pretty experienced.
I think if we're going to get a head around things like mid-season trade period and trading players while they contract, then we've got to be mature enough to accept and understand that these things happen.
Not for mine.
Don't like it?
Mid-season draft, fine. But if you've got a final, it could potentially be, it's a few days away. There's no hurry. I mean, there's plenty of time between the end of the season, whenever that is, for Port Adelaide or for Melbourne or for Sydney Swans, and when this deal is going to get done. I'm just not quite sure what the
Yeah.
urgency is.
I find it hard to get my head around the theory that he would be less focused and less committed come game time just because he's met Port Adelaide a week earlier.
even if he's playing against Port Adelaide at some stage
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
his final series.
Well,
Well, let's
he'd want to be best on, wouldn't he? So
You've got your chest puffed out because your All-Australian team was very close
it was
to the mark, wasn't
very
it?
close.
Yes.
A few question marks have come my way in regards to our relationship, Kane, and whether or not. But I can categorically say
No.
we did not discuss it,
Not one bit.
not one bit.
No.
In regards
Not
to
on
that.
air, not-
No,
not
well,
on
actually,
air.
no, I lie. I tried to get it
Who's
out of you,
this?
and you just gave me
Who'd you-
nothing.
who'd
Straight
you
batted
miss?
every
Who was
single
the one you missed?
full back. So I
Did you have Libba in
No,
yours?
I had no, I didn't. I had Harris Andrews in my side, and I had him, and I had Wilkie in early in the year, and then I thought Harris, going back over my team over the year, where he was probably the best full back, but that was the only one that was a little bit different. I put Larkey in late, and that was the only, and that put Libba on the outer. So they were the only two.
All right, of all the feedback I personally copped, it was probably Libba, and Gerard was probably the spokesperson for that as well in terms of the unlucky player that missed out.
I think unlucky's being kind to yourself, Kane and Jono.
How would you describe it?
I would have described it as borderline criminal.
Jono, this text, why does Jono hate the Saints so much?
I
Does
don't
he
hate the
still
Saints.
hold a grudge?
A grudge,
Just-
because they
just-
beat us in a couple of prelims.
And I'm just reading the text
No.
out.
09 and 10, no. I don't hold a grudge.
All right.
What? So if you're a better team, that's it. We were beaten by a better team on the night. They were good, the Saints. Then I like the way they're developing. And I think this has been a great year for them. But yeah, don't think they're ready to have a huge impact in the final.
Who's your coach of the year, Jono?
Coach of the year is Craig McRae.
Okay.
Yep.
Just moving on to some other topics. I had a look and I'm interested in all of your thoughts on this. The West Coast Eagles top 10 of their best and fairest. It is,
What you
I
expected to
haven't
be,
seen
though?
it.
well,
When they're a shocking side, they've been
Gerard,
smashed by
I
100
didn't
points.
expect Andrew Gaff to finish 7th in the best and fairest.
I think
Andrew
if-
Gaff.
Well, but
But you know why?
Anybody
'Cause
that played
how many
a dozen
games has he played?
games-
Yes.
anybody that played a dozen
That's
games
it.
got
Well, that's my
votes.
point. Like, how
understand your
so
point,
how
but-
alarming is it then?
Well, of course it's alarming.
So how do they turn it around? If the young players aren't going
Slowly.
to help it, the senior players need to drive this group out of it, and they're not that young. So if Alex Witherden is finishing 8th when he probably wouldn't be on the list of 17 teams, that's an issue for me. If Hearn's finishing 5th and he's played 13 games and he's retiring, where to now? Jaden Hunt finished 4th.
Well, I think it's going to be a long haul for them. I think you
course
know
it
that,
is.
and the whole footy world knows that. Adam Simpson knows that. The board knows that. That's why they took a fair while to make their decision. And they know that they've got to get their drafting and their recruiting right, their trading right in particular, and getting these kids in. They can't make a mistake
Who won it?
because it's going to take a period of time.
Tim Kelly, and rightly so, and Oscar Allen was second. So no issue with the top two.
Did Tim Kelly
Okay.
get any look in the All-Australian? Was he in the squad? I don't think he was.
It wasn't in the squad, no.
Jeez, it was a good year for no squad. And I know it's difficult to get all the midfielders in, but gee, he was. Sometimes you get harshly treated just because your
What's his
side's.
ball use like, though, Tim Kelly?
Oh, it's pretty good, isn't it?
I don't think so. We'll ask Corny about that. But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting side note about how far they have slipped. I mean, Barras was ninth, so he's a good player. But other than that, you guys don't have an issue with it? I thought it was an interesting side note anyway.
No, it's the amount of volume of games in a side that's depleted. So I haven't even looked at it. Honestly, Oscar Allen's my favourite. He's one of my favourites in the comp.
Should he be
Has
captain?
been for a long
Should
time.
he be the captain next
Well,
year?
I don't know. I've got a little bit of a question mark over that, only because he's still so young and just finding his way in the game. And I'm not big on throwing the whole club leadership at a young guy.
Who would you give it to,
yet.
Jono?
I'd have to come back to you on that and have a really good look at it. And I know he's this obvious standout, Oscar, but with what he's done. But let this guy just play. Let him be Oscar for a little while. Let him develop, find his way still, and then possibly.
What's he now?
Really
Fifth year or?
Yeah, so let him develop still his own leadership style and his leadership
He's young,
nature. Yep. So, and I know some can do it at a young age. Don't get me wrong, and he's quite inspiring. But I think just let him keep developing.
All right, Brad Johnson is here for King Island Play Australia's best pure links golf. What are you up to over there? Anything?
Just thinking that number one pick. I mean, if I'm West Coast and you're talking about the trading, you got to trade the number one pick, don't you, Gerard? Like, as good as Harley Reid would be, you get multiple picks in. I know they traded pick 2 last year, but here's a chance. And the list of suitors is as long as the Flemington Straight. They're coming from where they'll get a great deal, and you get multiple picks. Get as much top end talent as you can possibly. Listen to Paul Connors on the AFL website talking about the history of number one picks and how many have played in premiership sides, which isn't many.
It's 4.
Yeah. So therefore, wouldn't you just spread the net as wide as it? Get as many young kids in there as you can to turn the wheel quicker.
I understand the philosophy. I haven't seen the young guys though, so it's
No, I'm the
difficult
same.
to
Yeah, and
make
only
it.
they know what they prioritise.
But absolutely understand the philosophy. Who won out of Melbourne trading 2 picks and a draft pick, which ended up in Hunt for Josh Kelly? So they ultimately ended up with Salem long term. Josh Hunt played for a fair period of time, and one other whose name escapes me at the present.
Wasn't Dom Tyson?
It was Dom Tyson,
Yeah.
yeah. So they ended up with Dom Tyson, Josh Hunt, and Salem, who's still a fantastic player, versus Josh Kelly.
But I think history says, in recent history too, the clubs who have been able to get multiple top end picks in have turned their clubs around really quickly. I mean, one of them was playing in a qualifier. We all talk about.
So
Port
when you say
Adelaide all
top
the
end picks, what are you talking about? If you said you're
first
gonna
round
get-
picks,
so first round at the back, if you said 2 top teners,
size you can get.
I'll probably take it.
Yeah. Well, look,
But if you're
the
telling
devil
me
will be in the
18
detail.
and 19 and a 3,
No,
well, no, not
but-
interested.
Yeah, and you're in charge of your own destiny if you're West Coast. You drive a hard bargain. You know you want Daniel Curtin as well. So you are trying to get and that's what I mean, competition. Like when you have multiple bidders at the auction, you're in a good position.
So if it's just say it was 8 and 16 for pick 1, would you do that deal?
No, I'd want more, I reckon.
Okay. I think
Yeah.
I
Well,
would.
again, it depends on how you view Harley Reid as opposed to what else you think isn't available in that draft. Only they would know that.
Yeah, I think it want a bit more. Would you?
Yeah.
What do you think?
No,
Jono?
yeah, it's the collective. Unfortunately for West Coast, they're not in a position to get the next 2 drafts wrong. They're going to pick five youngsters,
Yep.
and they've got to, of the 10, I should say, let's just say round number 10 over 2 years, they've got to get 6 to 7 right, and that's just the pressure that they are under as a list management team now.
Are you concerned if they finish bottom next year?
No, not at all.
No.
Not one bit.
You
Because
just
it's
want to be a bit
it's
more
the next 2
competitive.
years. It's the next 2 drafts. They've got to be better, and
You'd like them
hopefully
to win
injuries
4
help that.
games and finish in
Exactly.
the bottom 1 or 2.
But it's the next 2 drafts they just cannot get wrong. They've got to get it 80% right.
Absolutely good stuff.